FICMRepair.com. We're all in this together.
Hey guys, Ed here with FICM Repair yet again. So, got a call today and I figured it was about time I shoot a video on it because it was just going to help so many more people if I do. So, I've got another video on the benefits of monitors and tuners and differences and all that, and we'll link that one of the sides, probably in this one. We'll see, I don't know. And yeah, I mean, if you've got like an Edge Insight CTS3, this is freaking awesome, and the reason that God loves you and wants you to be happy. If you've got like an SCTX4, right? If you've got like, I don't know, I mean, say you've got a Scan Gauge 2, this is the box, but you get it. If you've got a Scan Gauge 3, right, which I have to, well, here, fine, reach up. Scan Gauge 3. These provide you with live data. And live data, you post a message on the forums, any of the Facebook groups, whatever, saying, hey, I'm having a problem. The very first thing they ask you is, did you pull codes? Oh, I don't have a code reader. Okay. Do you have live data? Oh, I don't have a way to measure things live. And just from looking at that, you'd be left thinking, man, without this, I've got no options. So the purpose of this video is to tell you how to diagnose a hot no start issue. Now there's two types of hot no start issues commonly. There's the, hey, I pulled into wherever I was going, shut off the truck, came out 20 minutes later, went to start it, and no joy. Okay. The other one is I was driving along and all of a sudden it's like somebody cut off the key. All right. Well, and now it won't restart. Recognize that both of those are very, very similar in the troubleshooting. It's just a question of what the likelihood of the problem being X, Y, or Z really was. Like dies while driving is very, very, very commonly a snap to connect fitting on a high pressure oil pump. And we should probably shoot another video on high pressure oil pumps. And if you got more than 160,000 miles on your stock HPOP, I don't care if it's an 05, I don't care if it's an 07. You know, yes, the 03s are more susceptible, 100%, the barrel style pumps. But if you got more than 160,000 miles, change out your high pressure oil pump, and you know, links below to make that happen. And dies while driving can also be a FICM, although it's a lot less common. It can be, but it's a lot less common. It can also be a bad fuel pump. It can be, but it's a lot less common. So, okay. So this video is primarily going to focus on, hey, I pulled someplace, I shut it off, and now I've got no gauges, I've got no means of reading codes, I've got no tools with me, or I've got very basic tools with me, as the case may be, or available to me, whatever the case is. But even without the crazy awesome monitors, and the monitors are going to make your life so much better, there aren't even words, so much better. But without it, there's 17 things, minimally. This is what I came up with off the top of my head, very frankly. 17 things you can do to troubleshoot a hot no start and very possibly get you back on the road again right then, at least get you home, whatever, okay? So in no particular order, here goes. Looking off to the side, I got a list behind me. The first one is, really, is it the FICM? And you can kind of get a sense for that, an indication anyway, of do you have injector clatter, key on, engine off? If you do, the FICM is almost certainly not the problem, okay? But recognize that in order to get FICM, in order to get injector clatter, you need cam sync, you need crank sync, you need a prior decent running where injection control pressure was over 500 psi. You need a lack of keep alive memory codes, a 0603 code. These are the things that you need, and a decent exhaust back pressure sensor. These are the things that you need in order to get injector clatter actually. But remember, your truck is a lot like your significant other, right? If you go ahead and you do something stupid, your spouse is going to remember, your girlfriend's going to remember, your boyfriend's going to remember, and I know the vast majority you're talking about your girlfriend or your wife, but they're going to remember when you do something stupid. And what do you have to do? You have to prove to them that you're good again before you're back in good graces. We know how it is, right? So step one, don't do something stupid. But if you do, right, seek some forgiveness and fine. But your ECM, your engine control module, is the very same way. So if you've got like a high pressure oil system problem, which is the vast majority of the basis for, hey, my truck won't start after been sitting for a few minutes, then in order for it to start again, you need to have all those check marks checked before the ECM is going to energize the FICM's relay to enable the possibility of ignition. Okay, fine. So what are the first things? So the first thing is key on engine off. Do you have injector clatter? If it's all quiet on the western front, then it's either a FICM problem or you've got another problem that's preventing the FICM from sinking. And so it's like, okay, fine. So the second thing is key on engine off. Do you hear the fuel pump? It's that, it's on the frame rail underneath you. Do you hear that little whir? Don't confuse this with the vacuum pump that is on the passenger fender. It's a very quiet noise, but you should be able to hear it. The third is going to require a little bit of tools. Do you have proper voltage coming out of the FICM? So Ford would say 45 volts. We would say 46 actually. But do you have proper voltage key on engine off? And do you have proper voltage during cranking? Do you have 46 or more volts in those scenarios? That's going to require a Torx T20 bit. It's going to require probably a plier. It's going to require a 10 millimeter wrench to get the degas bottle off. And it's going to require, obviously, a digital voltmeter. So, and be very careful if you do this with a digital voltmeter. Please hop on our website, FICMRepair.com. Just type the word test in the search box, and you'll come up with an article that was written years ago. It's, can I test the FICM to ensure it's the culprit? And it goes through painstaking measures on what to do with a digital voltmeter to check the output voltage of the FICM, okay? So, there's that. The next thing you can do is a little more simple, right? You can say, hey, is my motor still okay? And so open the driver door. Oh, and by the way, recognize that inadequate supply side voltage kills FICMs. Every time you engage the starter, it's about a 1350 amp inrush current to get that starter to begin spinning. And if you've got a 6.0 starter, about 300 amps or so to keep it spinning. If you have a 6.4 starter, about 400 amps to keep it spinning. So it's a lot of electrons leaving the building. So if you happen to have a battery charger, please hook it up. And yeah, just put it on the 15 amp setting. Don't put it on the start setting necessarily, but put it on the 15 amp setting and just recognize how many electrons are leaving the building. If you've got a way to monitor your voltage during all this, if during cranking, if your voltage is dropping, I'm going to say below like 11.5, ideally you would stop. Otherwise, you're taking a chance of trashing your FICM, and we don't want that. I mean, I know a guy if you do, but let's try to avoid that if we can. Okay, so have a battery charger hooked up if at all possible. If you're on the side of the road though, or in the parking lot of the local home improvement warehouse, obviously your tools available to you are lessened. So, but just keep in mind. Okay, so what you can do is you can open the driver door and you can crank on the truck. And after 15 seconds, so just in your mind, 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, let it crank for 20 seconds, or until you hear a ding. So you hear a ding, and all of a sudden on the left of your instrument cluster, if you have good base oil pressure, your oil pressure gauge will go to the middle. That says, hey, we're developing low pressure oil. Okay, so there's that. During your cranking, you can establish, hey, do I have a smooth crank? Is it, or an undulating crank? Is it, or is it, if you have an undulating crank, it could be that you've got a base engine problem, but recognize that if your FICM is injecting fuel to some of the injectors, but not other of the injectors because of whatever reason, that's impacting things. So maybe what you want to do is you want to yank the FICM's relay on, inside the fuse box, and that little a fuse box to the driver's side of the master cylinder find the relay, the little 1-inch brake cube, pull that puppy out of there and crank on it with that out, and or there is a remote start engagement wire on the driver's side fender well that you can disconnect right by the blower motor, and you can just touch it to the positive post of the passenger side battery, and that will, both of those methods will prevent fuel from being sent to the fuel injectors, and it'll allow you to better determine, do I have an undulating crank or do I not have an undulating crank, okay? So recognize that. Also, and very related to this, is do you have a fast enough crank? When you turn it over, is it or is it right? So you need a given amount of speed of it cranking in order for it to successfully have ignition. It's about 130 RPM or so, but again, you don't have gauges, so you can't really tell. And so, but is it spinning over fast enough? Because if it's not, maybe your starter has gotten weak, or maybe your batteries have gotten weak. Or maybe there's something else going on, including, by the way, like a hung up AC compressor. If your AC compressor is not disengaging, you can check on the front of the pulley. There's a little clutch. Have somebody else look at it as you're cranking, or you can use the remote start engagement wire to go ahead and check to say, hey, is the whole issue that, that a pulley is locking up? Now, down that path, you can also, and I guess we're going to get to more than 17 because I've just added the AC compressor, which wasn't on my original list in all honesty, just thinking about stuff live. You can also disconnect, you can pull the serpentine belt off and flip that little lockout on the tensioner, and you can just take all the other pulleys out of the mix and say, hey, does it spin over smooth now? Does it spin over faster now? When all that stuff's affected, do I have a locked up pulley, in other words, okay? So these are things that you can do. But you can also go ahead and just to get you that little extra speed if your starter is slowing down, put your battery charger if you've got it on a start setting, or get a jump start from another vehicle, to assist the batteries. Anything, because all you're trying to do is get home, right? Primarily. But you need adequate cranking RPM, okay? Now, if you've done all this so far and you're still not getting any joy, and you've got some basic tools available to you, the next thing you can do is you can disconnect the batteries, just the negatives, not the positives, just the negatives, not the positives, of both batteries. And if you have an auxiliary sound system that you have a third battery in the back or whatever, then all the negatives off all the batteries is the point. Take the negatives off. Flip the headlight switch on for about 15 minutes. Obviously your headlights aren't going to come on, but you are going to drain all of the electrons from every little circuit board that exists in there, and the ECM, PCM, TCM, etc. And you're going to basically, it's like a poor man's reset. So you can go ahead and do that, flip the headlight switch back off again, rehook up the negatives and say, hey, does it start now? If it starts now, recognize that that's just going to get you home. It's a band-aid. There's still something else wrong with the truck, but at least it might give you an opportunity to get home, okay? The next thing on the list you can do is while you're cranking, you can look at the tach. Is your tach moving? If it is, that tells us that the crank position sensor is working. So there you go. By the way, sidebar on that, a whole lot of you pull codes, hey, my truck's not starting, and you're throwing cam or crank codes. Those are almost hardly ever the problem. They're set because you don't have ignition the way you want to. If you've tried everything else, or you look down and you see a bunch of frayed wires, okay, fine. But if that's not what's going on, recognize that that probably your cam and crank sensors are not the problem. So save your cash. So, all right, moving on the rest of the list. A lot of you are tempted to spray ether. Please don't. Please don't. If I can't convince you not to, though, when you're going to spray something to help it, give it a little sniff of something, and it starts, recognize that that is supporting the idea of inadequate high pressure oil. So your starter is spinning at a given RPM. Maybe you're boosted, maybe you're not boosted, maybe you got an auxiliary battery charger, maybe you don't, maybe you got another set of batteries, whatever. but it's spinning at a given set of RPM and you're not developing the 500 psi of injection control pressure necessary to enable the possibility of ignition. So you spray a little bit of ether. It's an incredibly bad idea. Please don't do it, okay? But if you're going to freeze to death, I mean, you know, some desperate times, right? So if it starts, number one, don't shut it back off again, but recognize why it started. You've sprayed a combustible something, and that helped the cranking RPM to get it fast enough, because you're only cranking at about 130, 150 RPM, something like that. But all of a sudden when it starts, now you're at like 650, so it's spinning way faster. And so your high pressure oil pump that's weak, or it's got a leak in the high pressure oil system, something like that, it's offset by the fact that it's spinning over that much faster. So it's a Band-Aid, it'll get you home, okay? But recognize you still haven't solved the problem, okay? Down the path of Band-Aids that aren't going to solve the problem, if you have a late model, like a 2004 and a half or later, it's relatively easy, well, it's very easy, to get access to the ICP sensor, the injection control pressure sensor. So what you can do is you can disconnect that electrical plug. It's on the passenger side valve cover immediately behind the glow plug control module, and just disconnect that. That will default the ECM. It'll trick it into thinking that you've got more than 500 psi. And so if you actually only are developing like 480 or 490, which is not quite enough to get there, or if you have a bad ICP sensor, taking it off will allow the truck to start, and again, you'll get home. And then, you know, okay, now you can pull codes and all this kind of stuff, okay? So you can also do that. Other thing is, you can, with a buddy, it's going to take a buddy, you can put your finger on the FICM relay, and during cranking, do you feel the relay click? If you do, that tells you that you do indeed have crank sync, you indeed do have cam sync. Everything is happy because the ECM is trying to get the FICM to help. If you don't feel it click, there is a possibility that your relay itself is the problem. So if your truck's got more than 100,000 miles on it, maybe you want to buy a relay just as preventative. It's not going to solve your problem with your FICM, because bad relays do indeed kill FICMs, but it might make the difference as far as you getting home. So here's what you can do. You can take two small flat-bladed screwdrivers. You can actually pop the cover off the relay, and you'll see there's a little round electromagnet, and you can, with a wooden implement like a toothpick or whatever, you can actually move the relay. You can move the electromagnet over to engage those contacts, even though the ECM is not signaling it the, hey, we're go for, you know, we're go for ignition here. You can trick it by going ahead and manually moving that. So that's just a way. It's definitely a hack, okay? But it's not a long-term thing. You still have a core problem with the truck, is what I'm trying to tell you, okay? But these are all just things that you can think about. Other thing you can do, check your fuses, right? And check all the fuses, under the steering column fuses, the fuses to the driver's side of the master cylinder. Check all those fuses and verify that they're good. If you've got a digital voltmeter, the top of the fuse has got a little metal exposed. You can, you know, just put it on there, you know, put it on the continuity setting, you know, beep, 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 and check every single solitary fuse. If you don't have that, yes, you can pull one fuse out at a time, one fuse out at a time, please. Physically hold it up and say, is this fuse bad? Is this fuse good? And put it back, okay? So you can check your fuses. The other thing that's a possibility is that you have a cracked suction tube in your fuel tank, and or you're just out of fuel. I mean, you know, hey. But if you have less than a quarter tank, maybe what you want to do is go score yourself a jerry can and, you know, add 5 gallons, and it'll make the difference so you're not sucking air. By the way, recognize that whole cracked pickup tube, that's a thing, right? And the last thing you want to do is starve your injectors for fuel. And so if you haven't yet, on your 6.0, if you haven't changed out that pickup tube, I'll put links in the bottom. Please change that stupid thing out, or take the opportunity to run a fast pump. So and then you can get fastest pickup tube upgrade and all this kind of stuff. Or if you don't want to do the fast thing, you can get just a sump on the bottom, the one from Beans. Totally, that's a great solution, and that's available on our website as well. So you can do that. In addition to that, if you've got basic hand tools available again, and you got a buddy, you can take off the secondary fuel filter housing, the cap, the fuel filter cap, and key on engine off. Is the fuel bowl filling up? If it is, okay, you reasonably have a fuel pump that's working, that's getting fuel that far. If it's not, there you go. Sidebar, we talked about the fact that inadequate RPMs are going to go ahead and prevent it from starting. If you're on the edge and you're like, man, I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna pick up that Mean Green 6.4 starter, which by the way is freaking awesome. If you need a starter, that is an awesome starter. Links below. And yes, it is yet another reason that God loves you and wants to be happy. But if you've got more than 160,000 miles on your starter and your truck is used for conventional use, maybe in-town driving, that kind of stuff, not like not over the road, serious long hauler type use, but just conventional use. The top of the bell curve for a starter failing is about 160,000 miles. In all the years we've been doing this, we've only seen one case, where a 6-liter starter gave any warning at all. And the rest of the time, it goes like this. You wake up in the morning, go to start your truck, turn the key, vroom. Come home from work, turn the key, vroom. Next morning, turn the key, vroom. Next afternoon, on the way home from, trying to get home from work, turn the key, not even a click. I mean, nothing. And so it's like, crap. And this isn't going to happen to you on a Saturday. It's 72 degrees. You have nowhere to be. No, of course not. This is going to happen in the crappiest weather and anything else. So if you've got more than 160,000 miles on your starter, think about whether or not you want to proactively replace it. And we are huge fans of the Mean Green offering in this regard. But the thing that some people are tempted to do is they say, I'm not sure that it's starting, that it's turning over as quickly as it should. Maybe it needs a little more. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to upgrade the starter. So if you have adequate cranking RPM to get FICM sync, and you have adequate RPMs, but then you go ahead and you have a no start, and you put a faster starter up in there, like the Mean Green starter, and all of a sudden, my problem's fixed. Recognize that for the almost certainly likely band-aid that it is. You still have a weak high-pressure oil pump. You still have a leak in a W plug or a standpipe or whatever it is, an injector cup nipple O-ring. Whatever the case is, that all you've done is you've spun it over faster now to overcome that. So please don't think of that as a permanent solution, but it could get you home. So that is the entire list. I hope that helps. The only other thing that you can do, which really isn't a troubleshooting thing, but it's kind of on the list, and it certainly does work a significant percentage of the time, is just let it cool down. Leave it for a couple hours, try again. If that doesn't work, don't try again until it has a chance to sit overnight. We're talking like 10, 12 hours. So if it sits overnight and now the next morning you start it and it just like nothing ever happened, recognize as soon as you shut it off again, it probably isn't going to restart again because your issue is really high pressure oil. If you do have a high pressure oil system issue, please watch one of my other videos that talks about all the elements of the high pressure oil system and things that you might want to do while you're in there. So we thought that we needed gauges, and we recognized gauges are amazing, but I just gave you a list, a massive list of things to try to get you out of a hurdle where you either have no tools available to you of any kind or just some very basic hand tools. So you don't necessarily require one of these monitoring gauges. They do absolutely make your life so much easier. So if you've got two nickels to rub together, maybe you want to watch the monitors and tuners comparison video, we'll link it. But maybe this video will make the difference and allow you to get out of the situation you found yourself in. So hope this helped. If I forgot something, almost certainly I did, we're all human here, please put it in the comments below. I'll give you a shout out and probably should another video talking about just that and say, Eric from South Carolina said, or whatever the case is. So very, very good. Well, so excellent. Thanks for watching. If you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. If you haven't hit the notification bell, please do so. It makes all the difference and helps the algorithm out. It helps other people out too. So, FICMRepair.com. We're all in this together. Thanks.